Well, good morning, West Ham fans. It's Friday. We've done another week, my friends. Congratulations. Another week has gone. It's due to go, but hope you are all well. Hope you're not too hot. It was a sticky one last night, as the actress said to the bishop, wasn't it, in terms of the weather? Very, very sticky. Very sticky. Anyway, what isn't sticky or hot is the West Ham transfer news at the moment. And obviously we spoke yesterday, 75% of all player sales going. We put some numbers together, some various numbers to get an idea of that. However, I think there's a few players for the forgotten hammers who could help us out in terms of our squad next season. And actually, to be perfectly honest, I think not necessarily. I know some people have put in the comments would like to get a bit more information about, where's this person, how's this person getting on, that type of thing. So what I thought I'd do is whistle through at least two players who could help us out next season. And one of them is someone who I think we all go, oh shit, yeah, I forgot that. I forgot he's still here. Let's start with Cencio Somerville, shall we? The forgotten man of West Ham. I think it's ironic how Antonio's literally got injured, did his leg, broke both bones, and he's back on the pitch between Cencio Somerville getting injured. Obviously, we know that he had an injury literally one half into Graham Potter's first game in charge against Aston Villa when we lost 2-1. He was employed as a right wing back, which surprised a lot of people, but it seemed to work a little bit. And after a bright start and an assist to Paqueta's goal, the 23-year-old was forced off at half-time with a hamstring injury. Supposed to only keep him out for a couple of months, but reluctance to have surgery and then a setback meant he missed the rest of the season. And could still even miss the start of next season. He's expected to get involved with the Hammers after his surgery. He thanked God for the surgery, went well with the surgery. He said at Hammers it wasn't the season we hoped for, but we'll be back next season to give all your fans, give all for the club and for the fans. On a personal note, I focus on my recovery and comeback. I can't wait to show you guys the magic you've been waiting for. See you soon. Now, it's been speculated that West Ham are hopeful he'll be fit to take part in the pre-season tour of America. I don't think he will, to be honest. However, there's also a chance he could miss the start of the season. I think he will. Nevertheless, having him back, even from say mid to late, realistically looking at it, if he's going to miss pre-season, say he's not going to be back till the beginning of the season, I think you'd look at having him back involved in the squad after the international break in early September. I think that, for me, is a bit of a more likely time frame than, as anticipated by some of the club, being fit to take part in the pre-season tour of America. I can't see that happening. To be honest. We were led to believe that he, with the surgery and the setback, that you'd be looking at mid-August for a return date, and that does still seem to be the case. Strange how different bodies work in terms of recovery. I mean, look at where Antonio was 6 months ago to where he is now, compared to Somerville, who pretty much they probably about a month difference from getting injured. You can, I think it's fair to say that Antonio's injury was a more severe injury, but his recovery time has been phenomenal compared to Cencio. Some players do suffer from, do take longer to recover, and it does seem that Cree is one of those players. But I think you'll see him after the international break, but in September. I think that's probably more a realistic time to say. But strange things have happened at sea, Thankfully, he did have the surgery. I think the narrative was if he had the surgery earlier, then there would have been a possibility of him even playing towards the end of the season, but that wasn't meant to be the case. So, that could be a massive boost for us coming into September. Obviously, we'd have played 3 or 4 games already, but, he's hopefully he'll be back in as a key man. Another player who I think a lot of people have forgotten about is Mamadou Kante. We bought the 19-year-old, and look at the size of him. I mean, he's sitting down and he's almost as tall as Kenny Brown. We bought the 19-year-old defensive midfielder from Paris FC before loading him back to Paris FC for the remainder of the season. He didn't get a lot of game time until the end of the last sort of dozen so games of Ligue 2 and got a few minutes here, a few minutes there. Obviously, Paris FC got promoted to Ligue 1, and he will be reporting back for pre-season training in July. Now, what will be interesting to see is how he's utilised. We're crying out for a sort of midfielder, sort of defensive midfielder with a lot of energy, who can break up plays, physically dominating, who's got good stamina, who can run. I think there's a lot of boxes ticked with Kante. Depends how the club see him. Obviously, he was bought under the previous regime, and whether that is a cross on his name for Graham Potter, as he's not one of Potter's men, I don't know. But I think he could come in and make a big difference. If we're short in that midfield area, he could come in and definitely make a difference. Whether that means maybe towards the end, if we're bringing in players, so Rafael Niede or someone like that, you would see he's a similar type of player. He may well go out on loan potentially, maybe back to France for a Ligue 2 side. I don't think he'll go to Paris FC because there'll be a Liga and they'll have maybe bigger fish to fry. But I think you particularly pre-season, you may see him get a few minutes and seeing how he fits in the side. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the French under-20 midfielder. I think he's played under-20s because he's a good player. And he's a fucking giant as well, which is what we need. We need a bit of oomph in that midfield. One player who we will be welcoming back, possibly for pre-season, is Luizao. He's the gift that just won't stop giving or won't give at all, by the sounds of it. 2.5 years he's been at the club. Hasn't made one Premier League appearance, hasn't made one first team appearance. £4 million signing from Sao Paulo in January 2023. He's gone through 3 managers. And his only senior appearances across those 29 months were when he went on loan in the Polish Ekstraklasa when he was playing for Pogoń. They handed him his first senior appearance since moving from Sao Paulo, and he enjoyed some. He played a few games towards the end of the season, but got some rave reviews from the Polish press. Unfortunately, an eventual return to London Stadium sees him return to square one. Just turned 23 and still with only 16 senior league appearances on his CV across 3 countries. It comes as no surprise that Luizao wants a clean break from West Ham. He was quoted in a Brazilian paper, I believe, earlier this week, criticising West Ham in terms of where his trajectory was going to stay in the under-21s for 6 months and then progress into the first team. That was 2.5 years later. He's got 1 year left on his deal. And there was a hope that maybe Pogoń would be his forever home. They finished 4th in the top flight. However, what's interesting is the side have never in their history spent over £1 million on a single player, and they weren't going to do that with Luizao. They released a statement earlier, I think it was yesterday, basically confirming who was leaving, and Luizao was one of those names, saying the players will fulfill their contracts and say goodbye to their clubs. Gentlemen, thank you for your commitment to playing for the pride of Polineria. We wish you good luck in your future careers. Now, what's going to see is what happens next with Luizao. Obviously, 1 year left in his deal. We did reject a deal, I think it was in January, from Corinthians. It was last summer, I think, from Corinthians. But could he yet feature for West Ham in pre-season? I think based on what we do, I mean, he was quoted in a newspaper saying, "My company are willing to negotiate a loan or a permanent deal, but it doesn't depend only on me. It depends on West Ham. West Ham are looking forward. If it is a loan, let it be with a permanent option." They didn't rule out me coming back there and even doing pre-season, but also if a deal comes up that is really good for them, they can include a purchase clause. Right now, everything is open. When I arrived back in January, my first 6 months were about to be adaptation, playing for under 21s, and doing some training with the first team. At the end of those 6 months, I would be integrated into the first team. But the months passed on, and I ended up with a coach who had some difficulties with younger players. David Moyes. These things ended up not happening. I tried to leave on loan to get minutes. Then there were some internal difficulties with the club, and I couldn't leave. I spent 2 years kind of going back and forth between whether I would leave or stay until I managed to go to Poland. So again, we may well see him, particularly if we're led to believe that Caelan Casey could be looking to go out on loan as well. Not necessarily Sammy, he's coming in as a replacement, but he coming in at least for pre-season and then possibly having a look at him. To be honest, in my opinion, I've seen him live. He's not good enough. He's not good enough, and the Brazilian experiment failed. But I've seen sort of bits of Kante. I think he could be a good one for us. Obviously, we know about Cencio Somerville, what he can bring to the party. But Luizao, just don't think, he ain't good enough in my eyes. Ain't good enough at all. But we may still see him around pre-season. You remember, I think it was it the Australian tour? He scored an absolute belter of an own goal, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure it's on Twitter, so go and check that out. Anyway, peeps, thanks very much for your time. Just for a little morning show. Well, that's not that one. Little morning show. Just wanted to, think of some names that have been lost in the shuffle at the moment. That's also including the likes. We haven't mentioned, obviously, to the cows come home in terms of Freddie Potts and George Earthy, Callum Marshall, Patrick Kelly. I mean, these people are going to be coming back from their loan spells. I don't think the likes of Marshall and Kelly will step up, but definitely Earthy, Potts. Then be interesting to see what happens with Caelan Casey and also with Lewis Orford and also with Mamadou Kante as well. There's definitely a deal to be had there. Definitely a player there we can hopefully utilise and at least pre-season get a look of him. Anyway, my friends, take care, everyone. Stay cool. Stay safe. And I'll see you a little bit later on talking about transfer rumours for a change. Much love. Bye-bye.